Hi, this is Jon Anderson. You're listening to Dave J. in L.A. and myself.
Hi, John. Yes,
Hey.
Indeed, the one and only Jon Anderson on the phone. How are you doing today, John?
Very good. Thank you so much.
Great. Pleasure talking to you. Let's start by talking about your latest release, which is a collaboration with Royna Stolt from the Flower Kings, a recording called Invention of Knowledge. Can you tell me how that project came about?
Well, I met Royna in Miami, first of all. I got on a boat. It was a prog rock special boat trip. 3,000 prog rock fans and a bunch of great musicians, a lot of different kinds of bands. And I was doing my solo show, and we floated away to the Bahamas, very fancy. And I did my solo show, went to listen to a couple of great bands, and I actually went to see Transatlantic, and they were performing their latest album. Very interesting band, very good band. And I noticed the guitar player, this guy, Royna Stolt, very, very happening guitar player. And then I'd actually been in touch with the drummer from the band, and he'd asked me, why don't we do some Yes songs at the end of the trip, like a festival ending? And I said, okay, let's do it. So I asked them, would they like to do Revealing, which is a 20-minute work? And they all said, yes, we got to do it. And we did that, Out of the Sunrise, Roundabout, On of the Lonely Heart. And we did it on the last night, and I just noticed that Royna had a special guitar style, and I just gave him a hug at the end of the show. And then within a couple of months, we got in touch with each other because there was a guy on the boat, a guy called, what's his name now? I'll remember it in a minute. He actually runs this record company called Inside Out Records, and his last name is Weber. Anyway, Mr. Weber got in touch with me and said, why don't you and Royna get together and make an album? And I remember that Royna was with this band Flower Kings way in the 80s, you know, and they loved, actually Royna loved Yes music and the music that I'd recorded in my life. So it was actually like a meeting of two good friends, musical brothers, if you like. And I just started sending him some music. This is 1.5 years ago, and I started sending him some musical ideas, maybe half a dozen songs that I had waiting to be created. And he actually did an incredible production of the songs, but it took over a period of 6 months. He did a lot of work on it with him and his friends there in Sweden. So we actually made the album via the internet. We actually didn't meet again until about 2 months ago in L.A. to do a photo shoot. So it's amazing how you can make an album through the internet, as interesting and as musical as Invention of Knowledge is, without seeing each other. But we were connected, and I always say, well, we're on the same planet, so I'm sure that works a lot. So the internet is such an incredible vehicle.
I was going to ask you about the recording process and how you went about it. And did the musical ideas come first, or the lyrics? And then also, did you have a particular lyrical theme in mind or a musical style in mind before you started?
Well, the most important thing were the songs. I'd written these songs on and off with about 5 or 6 people over the last 8 years. I've been writing with so many people because I put an advert on my website saying musicians wanted, send me a minute of your music. When the website and Skype and the internet, iTunes and MP3s where you could send music to each other started up about 12 years ago, I jumped on that because to be able to work with musicians everywhere in the world is magical. And it keeps me alive, it keeps me musically awake. And so I had all these songs, and I sent the songs which had lyrics and everything to Royna, but he decided to rearrange the musical side of it, which was amazing that he would change the music completely on most of the songs. 1 or 2 of the songs are very similar to the originals, but the key to working with Royna was he would send back his version of the music on top of the, for the song, and then he would extend it a little bit with more sort of progression of music, and I'd start singing on that as well. So we sort of dovetail one song to another song with a little bit of music of me and Royna. So that's how it really evolved. And the lyrics, generally speaking, was the idea of the invention of knowledge. It was all about how we're reinventing ourselves continually. And if you look back over the years, the inventions that we've created are sort of bouncing us into the next generation of inventions. Here we are going through the internet revelation, to call it the internet revolution, like 100 years ago it was a mechanical revolution, the industrial revolution, and 100 years before that it was the farming revolution and how to create big farming experiences around the world. And it goes on into the past. We're pushing ourselves now into the future, that we're talking about high-speed travel, space travel is happening now, using magnetic fusion, and getting to the moon in 40 hours is not beyond the means of the next 10 years. And we're getting rid of the flying around in dustbins, like David Bowie once sang about. Here I am sitting in a tin can, you know. It's amazing how we are evolving very, very fast now. We have this extraordinary technological world around us, talking about virtual reality, video games that are totally virtual reality now. There are some incredible evolvements of holography that you can read about and see on the internet, of people talking to people in different parts of the city using these specialized recording systems. And so people can actually, it's like Obi-Wan Kenobi, when Princess Leia was standing there, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope. That's coming to realization now. And flying cars is happening, by the way. That's all to do with drones. You get a bigger electric drone, and they're actually making them in Korea, I believe. And I love the idea of the evolution of the adventure that surrounds us in the invention of our next world, and so on and so on. Because it'll open up our world to understand why we're here.
So many amazing things happening at the moment, and especially communication-wise. And I don't know whether you saw that Peter Gabriel TED talk that he did, where he's actually experimenting there, getting animals to communicate with other animals via the internet with a monitor and a screen, and dolphins are touching the screen to get reactions and responses from other animals.
Yes, it's a perfect time to understand that we're all connected, and we all know this, and we've talked about it for the last whenever. I think when the God bless the Beatles for bringing a little bit of sunshine into the world. With Sgt. Pepper, along with the great Brian Wilson and all these great musicians of the 60s that pushed everybody into the 70s, musically speaking, but also consciously speaking. That's why we had this wonderful, the hippie sort of world happen in the 60s. I was a hippie, still am. And hippie comes from Hopi, the great nation of Hopi Indian.
Yeah.
And so we're learning to understand a lot of things that surround us. And it's an incredible life to be living in. I'm very, very fortunate and grateful and humble and thankful to be making music all the time. And this album is all about that. And it's a reflection on the album, because it works. The album works. And people who are interested in music on different levels, it's an album that really touches you, and it touches me. Anybody who's listened to it, the reviews have been amazing around the world. And that's all that you need, people to enjoy it.
Yeah, as well as, obviously the progressive rock themes that are in there. There's some nice jazz movements in there as well.
Of course, yeah.
I was just going to ask, and even going back to the whole package, the cover artwork is really good too.
Yeah, I remember when we first, I spoke to Rania about the artwork of making like a 3D cover or something crazy. Like, you start thinking when you start working on a project, how can we do something different? And he had this guy, Silas, and who sent us this early drawings. And I said, this is exactly right. Now, if we can make this move, when people look at the artwork on the cover, it should be moving. So we actually did some videos that are coming out. And I put a couple up on my website. of the artwork moving and me singing. Okay. So if you go to Facebook, thejohnanderson.com, you can actually see these beautiful artwork videos. Short vignettes, really.
Yeah. I was just wondering, during that recording process, when you're backwards and forwards of files, is that a help or a hindrance to the creative process when you're not actually in the same room to give instant feedback, or like, hi, how about if you change this here, or do that?
Actually, what it does is very interesting, because as I said, we're on the same planet. So Ronya would send me a piece of work, and I'd listen to it, and I would right away know what was working and what doesn't quite work. So I could email him back and say, before you lock yourself into this, try adding another verse at the end of this piece, because it needs to be extended a little bit, and then add some very dreamy sort of section, because it's just been a little bit heavy for the last 3 minutes, 4 minutes, now an extra verse at the end, and then an extra something there would be great. And it was like he understood what I was saying, because within an hour he sent it back exactly the way I was thinking.
Well, that's great. Well, the whole result is very impressive. Great sound.
Yeah, I think Ronya is one of those great things, because we worked on it on and off for a year and a half, and he would go on tour with Steve Hackett, and I was doing touring with Jean-Luc, and I had a couple of shows. I'd go out and do some solo shows. So in between that, I'd come back home and I'd have a day resting, and then go in the studio and think, okay, I wonder where we are with the album. And all of a sudden, the album comes up and I can hear it clearer. Because if you spend a little too much time on anything, you can get a little bogged down with how does it sound, is it good, is it right, is it wrong? But because we had space in between the creation of the album, we were able to look at it very clearly after different periods of time. So I didn't actually hear the whole album until March this year, only 2 or 3 months ago. And we put the album together, and we worked on it for a year and a half, and I sensed that the music should work, but you don't know until you listen to it all the way through.
Yeah.
And I was relieved after listening to it once through. I went, oh my gosh, this really worked. So happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the next thing, you think about, this is just music. It's not pop music, or it's not radio music. It's not something people are going to hear unless they buy the album. It's just good music, and that's what music really is. It's all a musician wants to make good music. If he's lucky enough to become a pop star or a rock and roll star, great. And I've been through that experience, and it's an extraordinary experience. But it isn't reality in a sense. It's just something that happens, like they call it a flash in the pan. And you have it. You're a big hit record. You have a number one for about 3 months, and Owner of a Lonely Heart. For 1 year we were kings of the world, and then after that, then you got to become kings of the world again. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Yeah. So music is more important in a way.
Yeah. And talking about yes, and great musicians you've worked with, the next project you're working with is collaborating with your former Yes colleagues, Rick Wakeman and Trevor Rabin. So when was that idea first put together, and who proposed that?
Well, I've been mentioning it to Rick and Trevor for a couple of years, because I've been in touch with Rick. I did a tour with him a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, in the east coast of USA. We'd done a tour of England, which was a lot of fun. Me and Rick together is just complete silly fun.
Yeah.
And, it has to be. Yeah. Because, he's always telling jokes on stage, and it's hard work. He thinks he's doing a stand-up gig,
I was going to say, you two are obviously very different characters, but you've obviously got a great respect for each other.
Well, yeah, but I believe me, I'm a Monty Python freak. I know everything about Monty Python and the Goons and Peter Sellers, and Spike Milligan is my hero, Anybody would put on his tombstone, I told you I was ill.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. Spike Milligan, one of the great writers as well. I loved his books. And so when me and Rick get together, we're really very playful. And we actually played, people put on this intro music for when you go on stage.
Yeah.
Well, we found this, I think it's called the Also Spec Zarathus by the Plymouth Symphonia. Is it Plymouth Symphonia? It's so bad. It really is the worst version you could ever imagine.
Is it like
but it's just really bad orchestra. It's a very, very bad orchestra. And we would put that on before we went on stage. And we could not stop laughing. So there's Rick, you know. And then on the other side, me and Trevor. I've known Trevor for now, since 1984, which is like many, many years, 40 years, sort of. And the interesting thing about Trevor is that when he left the band, he went on to become a very, very interesting and great film score creator. He's done about 40 movies in the last 15, 16 years. So I would be down to watch him work, and I marveled at the talent of the guy. He can score music and he can hear it in his head and write it down, and he can hear music in his head and write it down, which is an extraordinary feat for any musician to be able to do. And we became fast friends about 5 or 6 years ago because I'd go down and watch him work because I was very interested in how he was evolving as a musician. And then a couple of years ago, I mentioned, you know, one day, Trevor, we've got to go on the road together again. And he said, I want to, but I've just got to finish these 2 movies.
Right.
A year later, I'd say the same thing, you know. And so it was last December that Rick's manager, an old friend of ours called Brian, said, you know what, guys, why don't you get together? So it was a perfect sort of meeting of the minds that Trevor said, look, I'm going to have a year off from making movies, and Rick said, I'm going to have a year off from telling jokes. And we all said, I don't think so. I said, that'll be good, so let's get together. And now we've been writing some ideas together and talking about the show that we want to put together. And we're very excited. It just takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I was just going to say, did it set out as a recording project or touring project initially?
Gosh, it was supposed to be both, but we've run out of time. I think we're going to go on stage and do some classic Yes music from early 70s to late 80s, Talk, which me and Trevor wrote a lot of. There's a couple of songs from the Talk album, a couple of songs or so from 3 songs from the 90125 album, and then some of the really good early Yes songs, and just some ideas that I've been sort of thinking about how to reinvestigate ideas and redesign some musical Yes sections and ideas. It's like an evening of Yes music plus. That's what we call it anyway. And I think the advert's going to say, yes, it's ARW.
Right.
Because why not? Because we're Yes as much as anybody else, you know.
Exactly. And do you ever see a time when you and Rick would play with the other remaining members of the classic 1970s lineup?
Well, it's hard. You know, Chris passed away now a year ago, just last week, a year ago. God bless him. And with Steve, you know, Steve and Alan are doing their thing. It's very hard to know when we'll get together.
Yeah.
It's got to be a musical idea. And somehow I think that the way things are going, I'm a very sort of adventurous musician. And the only way we'll get together probably is if we get in the Hall of Fame in a couple of years or something like that. And I think that'll bring us together.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I'm a more adventurous musician.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in working with Roy Stalt again and working with Jean-Luc Ponty. I've just done a tour. I've just finished a tour with this miraculous violin player and ridiculously wonderful man. And I want to work with him next year. So there's so many great things coming.
Yeah. With the ARW project, have you got any new tracks written or finished?
I'm actually rehearsing them now.
Yeah.
I have about 3 pieces, and then there's a long piece that Rick wrote earlier this year that I'm juggling with. I think it can work. Yeah. It might work out that we'll tour and then record some more, and then tour, then record some more, that kind of thing over the next year or so.
Right. So that should be something to look forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting, I think anybody who likes music and likes Yes music and likes music in general are going to enjoy the tour, enjoy what we do, because we're going to have a great time. That's the whole idea.
Yeah. Talking of Yes, I saw the YouTube video of you performing some of the classic songs and some of your own as well with Todmobile, an orchestra in Iceland. And that was a fantastic performance. I just wonder if you plan any more performances with that, or collaborations, or any commercial releases of that?
Well, the idea was to just do the show. They invited me. It's a brand new, incredibly beautiful concert hall that was created there in Reykjavik, and they wanted me to come along and work with the band Todd Mobile. Mm-hmm. And Todd, who runs the band, is quite an incredible guitar player, and he kept inviting me for a couple of years, and then eventually I said, okay, I'll come over there, as long as we can do Awaken. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, please, I want to do Awaken, I want to do Heart of the Sunrise, I want to do Roundabout, Honor of a Lonely Heart, and, the usual kind of songs. And I said, okay, as long as we do Awaken with a choir and a small orchestra. And he said, it shall be done.
Right.
And he did. And I went over with my wife, Jane, and we spent 2 weeks in Reykjavik. Mm-hmm. And we fell in love with Iceland and the people. Yeah. And it is a beautiful recording, and people can go to YouTube and watch it.
Yeah, great
performance. As for releasing it, it's one of those things. It'll come out one day, not as a video, but it's not something that I was thinking about in my head at that time. Yeah. So I'm just happy that we did a very good version of everything.
Yeah, it comes out really well. You've obviously been very productive lately, both last year with the album you released with Jean Ponty, Better Late Than Never, and then the two projects we've just been talking about. You're obviously still very passionate about music. What is it that keeps you striving to create new work?
Well, I went through a very, very strange period. In the end of my time with Yes, I got very sick. I was on tour, and I had problems with breathing, and I was coughing quite a lot. And I'd been to so many specialists, and they couldn't figure out the problem. And eventually, I just said, I can't carry on touring the way we are. Maybe we should do an acoustic album or a semi-acoustic touring for a couple of years. And the other guys didn't want to do that. So I just started working on, as I mentioned earlier, I started writing with people through the internet. And in a way, that was a godsend for me, because I could walk from my house to my cottage, and my studio is here. Mm-hmm. And every morning I'd be singing new ideas and singing new songs. And this happened for, how many years? It's 12 years now. Mm-hmm. And I've created so much music in the last 12 years. It's kind of bizarre. But it's just something that I do. And halfway through, of course, not many people know, but I died, basically died a couple of times in 2008. Once I nearly drowned, and then the other time I couldn't breathe because of the terrible asthma problem that I'd never had in my life. And all of a sudden I was nearly dead. And my wife, God bless her, saved my life. Wow. And from that moment, I just wanted to become a better musician. I wanted to become a better person. I wanted to create some great music, because what's the point of living and pretending, well, my best music was in the 70s, or my best music was in the 80s. No, my best music is coming. Right. Because what's the point of doing it? Yeah, it's like I'm painting more and more as well. I love painting.
Yeah, going through something like that must put a new perspective on how you view things.
Well, you thank God you're alive, and thank the gods that you've been given the chance to create more music and create more, people like what I do. Mm-hmm. I'm not so well known. I'm just well known in a certain area. I can go to every city in the world and play in front of 500 people and have a great time and talk about life and sing songs that they remember, and new songs that they're going to find out about. And so when I do my solo shows, it's just me and my lovely wife Jane, and we go off on a beautiful sort of semi-holiday. We go around the world and a couple of guitars, and I'm so grateful.
Over the years, you've collaborated with so many great musicians. Is there anyone that you've always admired that you still want to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
Vangelis. Vangelis, I keep emailing him. He isn't very well, though. He's been very ill for a while. I'm going to email him today and send him my blessings, because I think he's going through a tough time at this moment. But, obviously the great people that I would love to work with, there's so many. It's an endless stream of, just you can pick any name and I say, I'd love to sing with him, or I'd love to work with him, and, I'd love to spend time with him or her. I'd love to sing with her, so on and so on. There are so many great singers, songwriters, musicians in this world.
So with the upcoming ARW project, Once that's all done, what's next in the pipeline for Jon Anderson?
Well, I was in touch with a friend, this is a couple of years ago. I started writing with a friend who lives in San Francisco, and we started writing. He loves Middle Eastern music. Mm-hmm. So I wrote about 5 or 6 ideas with him, and I have no idea where I was going with them. They're more, I don't know if you know, the kind of Middle Eastern music that is around. It's very spiritual, very, very connected to Mother Earth, and I'm thinking of Nasran Ali Khan was the greatest singer. Nice. Pakistani, amazing. And it's that kind of energy, you know. Mm-hmm. And about a month ago, somebody sent me a link, and there's an actual Middle Eastern ensemble here in our local Polytechnic University here at Cal Poly. And they have this Middle Eastern, there's about 20 of them, there's about 12 singers, and about 8 musicians, and they make such great music, and they put on this show every year. Mm-hmm. So I got in touch with them and said, I really want to work with you guys because I've been writing this kind of music. Mm-hmm. So they're excited, and we'll probably do it next year sometime, and I'm going to meet them next week for the second time and just go through the songs and how it's going to be presented visually. And that's a nice little idea for next year. Mm-hmm. And there's another project I've been working on for now 10 years, which is I did an album many years ago called Elias of Sun Hilo.
I know it well.
And, my son was always saying, Dad, when are you going to do Son of Elias? Mm-hmm. And I had to figure out what that meant. It took me a few years, quite a long time, actually. And eventually I figured out what it is. Now putting it together is part and parcel of all this music that I've been writing over the past 12 years now. And it's just a large amount of musical ideas that all seem to interweave with each other and work. Mm-hmm. And now it's a question of how do I put it out there into the big world. Mm-hmm. I'll let you know.
That sounds great. I look forward to that one.
It's a pretty crazy concept. The idea is that, you know, music is everlasting, music is forever, and music is timeless. Mm-hmm. That's the whole concept. And it's a lot to do with the golden mean, which is a very, very amazing sort of concept of this planet that we live on. Right. And you can just Google the golden mean, and it gives you an idea of what's going on.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time today. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. I wish you continued success, and I look forward to seeing you in LA at the Orpheum Theatre on November the 22nd with Anderson, Rabin and Wakeman. And for anybody listening out there, I highly recommend the Anderson and Stout project. So thank you for your time, Jon. It's been a pleasure, and continued success.
Wish you well, man. Take care. Bye-bye.